Just a few seconds to go. It's nearly there. What's gonna happen? Kind of wacky antics will go when I change the screen. Well, you only gotta wait. After 6, 5. I'm pretty sure this is slower than normal seconds. I think I did that wrong, but that's okay. 3, 2, and 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to broadcast number 2 of God is Imaginary. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers out there might have noticed that I had originally scheduled the stream for March 29th, Good Friday. Now, this is due to my comedic genius. I thought the Good Friday would be a humorous day to do it, but then, unfortunately, I have a life, and that kind of got in the way. So I was in a state of panic until I realized that the Sunday after Good Friday is Easter. And well, that's just very serendipitous. Some of you also noticed that last time on the show I said that I wanted to have Douglas back on. He was the guy telling me about how, God said in the Bible while they were doing slavery, this is how you do it in accordance with religion. But of course, obviously now that couldn't possibly exist. He also tried to prove that you could prove a negative by restating proving a positive as proving a negative in his in his example. It wasn't very well thought out. But I do want to have him back on because where is it? Oh, here it is. Because he mentioned something about atheists have always been saying that the tomb Jesus Christ. I don't even remember what it was. It was something about a tomb being empty. And he's saying, atheists have always said that, but recently people have found that the tomb was empty, but other ones were not. Now, being an atheist, this isn't something that I'd learned about before, obviously, so this didn't even play into my consideration one way or another. It's like he was trying to argue against an argument I wasn't making, because I hadn't heard anything about the tombs one way or the other. So I picked up this little book, Your Verdict on the Empty Tomb, and I'm nearly done reading it. But it's emblematic, much like the thing we're going to discuss, of how Christians need to have things both ways. It's like people trying to decide on a social issue or something, which way they're going to lean upon it, by saying, but obviously I condemn the bad things my side does, but yada yada yada. It seems like they're trying to apply due diligence to it, when in reality it's trying to obfuscate accountability. It's a put up for it. They need to say that science is proving that Christianity is real. Science and archaeology proves it. But when you say that what they're saying isn't consistent to the scientific method, or that there are flaws in the experiments that they're proving, they're saying also it says in the Bible. Here's one of the quotes on the back here that I find quite interesting. In this gripping book, the sharpest legal mind thoroughly scrutinizes the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection from the dead and comes to the conclusion that the case is absolutely watertight. Now, it doesn't actually say which side it's in support there for that quote. So the case is watertight. That could mean either way. But yeah, it's an interesting, hilarious book. It's actually not that long. It's 75 pages. Real thriller there. But I hope to have him on next time and discuss it. So, as you saw from the title, we're going to be discussing the alt-right magazine Newsmax. Now, if you're unfamiliar, they're, like I said, they're an alt-right news source that publishes... I was doing this show back in 2022 about this group, the Gang Stalkers, and I was designing a set for it where I needed a bunch of newspaper clippings and stuff to say some absolutely ridiculous things. And one of the things that I sourced for it was a Newsmax article, because they say a Newsmax magazine, because they say some fucking ridiculous things. I'm trying to pull up an example right here. Here it is. So here's one example. The climate change hoax. This is an article that is live on Newsmax Money in 2024, claiming that climate change doesn't exist. Let's take a look at it. For decades, the left has been sounding the alarm about climate. 2023, my mistake. It was the Stone Ages. They hold conferences, present what they call reports. Reports is not in quotes like it should be. I know that middle school level essays are pretty difficult to write, but oh well. And verbalize qualified or unsupported statements as if they were facts, as if they are facts. Changes the part of speech there. Interesting. Keep that quote in mind, though. Verbalize qualified or unsupported statements as if they are facts. Spoiler alert, the article, the main article here on the title, Jesus, His Real Face, New Evidence He Did Rise from Dead, does a lot of that, where they will just say things, but won't actually substantiate it. They talk about carbon-14 dating, and they say, but it's long been a controversial topic that many people are skeptical of. And then that's just all they say to refute it. It doesn't say how or why it could possibly be flawed. They just say that it is. And there is controversy around it, but they can't... Either they don't know the arguments against it because they're terrible... No, not because they're terrible, they just don't know it, or they're not arguing it because they're so fundamentally flawed that even, like, presenting them in any sort of way reveals the bias that they have to try and defend that Jesus Christ really was resurrected. By the way, I want to point out again, new evidence he did rise from dead, well put, by the way. They're talking about the Shroud of Turin. Now, the Shroud of Turin was discovered in the 14th century. The first photograph of it was taken in the late 19th century. New evidence, yeah, this is the first, you're the first to report on this. I see. It is funny. Yeah, they literally, I'm not putting words in their mouth. They call this a special report. They also put it alongside Remembering Billy Graham. He was a televangelist. And Jesus question, will he return? I'm sure they answer that. This magazine cost me $14, so I was so frustrated that I eviscerated it and ripped the pages right out of the book and scanned them for us to see here. So it starts out with this advertisement for Newsmax on cable. 3 p.m., conversations with Nancy Brinkler. And then 8 p.m. is Rob Carson's What in the World? It's a talk show. And then at 3 and 9 p.m. and 3:30 p.m., wow, she's really doing great. Wendy Bell's Common Sense, a talk show. And then at 7 p.m., the Gorka Reality Check, which is, if you can believe it, another talk show. They got 4 talk shows on one news network? How'd they cram it in there? But let's move on. Holy evidence. New scientific findings point to the authenticity of Jesus' burial shroud, giving new meaning to his life, death, and claimed resurrection. What's ironic about them calling this new is that this article here was already ran several times before in Newsmax's history. They've run it before in 2023. I don't remember the other years. It's definitely been more than one other time that they've reran it. In fact, I could probably... New evidence he did rise from dead. Jesus. We're doing real-time fact-checking. Real face of Jesus revealed in Newsmax magazine. I think there's also someone apparently reselling the magazine. They were frustrated too, and they're like, I'm done with this shit. Oh, this is a modern reprint. Here it is, yeah. So this was...
No, Bianca, it's still technically...
This was written all the way back in April 2023 that they're just rerunning again. Oh, you can see where their big focus is on southern border, immigration. Jesus Christ. All right. Well, not Jesus Christ. That's what we're talking about now. The man whose birth divides history and whose life continues to shape the modern world more than any other person finds his death over 2,000 years ago a matter of continuing controversy. Okay. I'm just scanning through a little bit here. The ancient 14-foot cloth has long been revered by Catholics as an iconic relic, but a growing number of believing Christians and others see the shroud physical proof of not only Jesus' life and death, but evidence of his resurrection. No longer can these claims just be brushed off. Claims be brushed off as just matters of faith. So, let's break this down. So they're going to be talking about what they call forensic evidence, because they're going to get really scientific here. They're going to talk about forensic evidence and carbon-14 dating. But then they also point out how these contradict their own narrative. So they just go back on it and say, oh, but these methods are flawed anyways. So they're just kind of revealing... as modern technologies and linen cloth. So I've read over this before, but it's just such dense word salad in that everything's just restated again and again. Petfills has analyzed studies ever made in the shroud, including carbon-14 study that has cast doubt on its authenticity. My study is definitive in that there is such no... okay, I don't know why they're bothering with any of this. Okay. So the first image of it was taken in 1898, and then they're talking about STURP, Shroud of Turin Research Project. And now this was when several scientists in the United States, Britain, and I believe Italy, all individually and independently from each other, fact-checked it, and and all came to the same conclusion that things like the so-called blood stains that are on it are tempera paint. Things like carbon-14 dating dated it at around 1300 AD Anno Domini. So that's a problem. They arrived in... The STURF team was granted 5 days of unchecked access to the shroud. I like that they're kind of implying that they tampered with the shroud in some way. We conclude... But evidence taken at that time has since has corroborated the belief that a crucified... Okay, so here's their first takedown of carbon-14. Despite Sturp's conclusions, which gave credence to the notion the shroud was Jesus' authentic burial garment, all of it was thrown into serious doubt in 1988 after the Vatican permitted its carbon-14 testing. Carbon-14, used in dating things such as bone, cloth, wood, and plant fibers, is based on the decay of a radioactive isotope. Tiny samples from a corner of the shroud's fabric were sent to labs in the U.S., Britain, Switzerland, that was the third one. All three labs declared the shroud originated between the years 1260 and 1390, more than 1,000 years after Jesus died. I guess they need to explain that bit. But they don't. But then they go on and say, since its release 35 years ago, the carbon-14 dating result has become the center of controversy, with many criticizing its methodology and conclusions. Now, they just say this, though. They don't, like, they feel the need to explain that 1390 AD was sometime after Jesus died. Critics of the study note that the cloth itself was nearly burned in 1532 in Chambéry, France during a fire. Okay. Is that why there would be more carbon on it? I don't... Because I'm trying to why would you mention that? So they're saying that the cloth was nearly burned? I'm trying to like rationalize as to why they would mention that it wasn't burned, but carbon-14 is different from carbon, which is produced from fires. Carbon-14 is a specific isotope. These and other patches... statisticians Mark Ariani at the University of Parma in Italy and Anthony Atkinson pointed out we're in full agreement on the ages of control fabrics from the ancient Egyptian moment. Yet raw data from the same test on the shroud yielded unusual results that differed by more than 150 years. So 150 years, they ruled that the fucking shroud was more than 13 years after when Jesus was supposed to have died and was resurrected. Or I guess when he was born. Yeah, it's weird how they measure that. Our research does not prove the shroud is authentic, nor that it is 2,000 years old, he said. But, that but is holding on to a lot right there. It's really pushing to prop up this story. Okay. And now we have a brief interlude in the article to point out that there is a 3 etched into the forehead of Jesus here. Now, the people editing this article clearly did not do 15 seconds of research, so they're trying to speculate on what this 3 could mean. The number 3 is, of course, a key number for Christians, as they believe it was on the 3rd day Jesus rose from the dead. And others say the shroud's 3 may have a hidden message. They talk about this reason and that reason and why this symbol might be there. But what they didn't bother to research, amazingly I know, is that the number 3, the digit 4... I'll actually read it out for you right now so you can corroborate this. The use of 3 lines to denote the number 3 occurred in many writing systems, including some like Roman and Chinese numerals that are still in use. So they're talking about these here, these symbols here. That was also the original representation of 3 in the Brahmic numerical notation in its earliest forms, aligned vertically. However, during the Gupta Empire, the sign was modified by the addition of a curve on each line. So we're talking about curving each line. So this is the earliest that the 3 was curved. Let's take a look at when the Gupta Empire was. It was from 319 to 467 CE, so 400 years after Jesus Christ's birth. So, too bad, so sad. If the shroud really is from when he died, which would be 35 AD or so, that 3, if it would be genuine, wouldn't be anything. But the idea of a coincidence is an impossibility to these people. They need to have it so that their evidence is scientific and airtight, watertight even, but also that there's some ambiguity in it and there's some faith in it. In what could prove to be the most important work on the shroud since Stirp over 40 years ago, crystallography scientist Liberato De Caro of the Italian National Research Council has developed a new X-ray dating technique. They were like, we're going to determine the terms of the experiment, and then when the results that we get from the experiment don't align with what we want it to be, we're going to change the experiment to something else. They're talking about computer image enhancement. The Stirp report had no full explanation as to how the image on the shroud came to be, but the experts were certain of one thing: it was neither a painted nor burned image. So this is wrong, by the way. There was paint, because they tested it from what they call like, the blood on it. They tested that and found that it was consistent with tempera paint that existed at the time. But because the original Stirp report from 1970 whatever said that they don't believe that it was painted, they're going to take that as a fact, but they're going to disregard the rest of it. It's much like how Christians take the Bible. They like this part of it, but they're going to leave out these parts of it. Oh, and we also got this full-page body spread. This little fold-in of Jesus Christ, the Shroud of Turin. I actually have it here. I might put this on the wall. no, where is it? There you are. Check that out. Hubba hubba, am I right? Looking good, Jesus. It found the shroud is not a fake, and the body image was formed by electromagnetic energy. Okay, so one of the common things to try and support the veracity of the shroud is that, oh, well, photography did not exist at the time. When photography does not require a camera to exist. Now, I don't know how the shroud was actually created. I actually don't. But there's the chemicals that photographs are created from, or created by, I should say, still existed. There are still chemicals that react to light. In the 50s, what they used to use to record samples of things is they'd take a piece of black paper that had a photoreactive chemical on it, and would just shine a light on it, and they would get the silhouette of it, and kind of like a transparent sort of like exploded view of it. A number of key findings about the image have been made by Stirp and other studies. It was not painted, no pigment found. There was pigment found. It was not scorched or burned. They already mentioned that it was. It is a two-dimensional image with encoded three-dimensional information. That's how all images are. That's what every image is. The distance between the body and the cloth is captured in the density of the image. Closer is darker. That's not a point. That's not a point for anything. The image did not come from contact with the cloth. Then how would there be blood on it? Like, they're saying that there's direct blood stains on the shroud itself. If it did not come into contact with it, there would be no way for blood to be on it. The image appears to be created by an oscillating strobe of high-intensity light with a simple wavelength, okay? Though this light came from inside the body. Oh, wow! To create a similar light, one would need all the electrical power generated on Earth. There's no way you could speculate upon that from just fucking, this. No, that's the wrong image. Like, this is what we're talking about here. There's no possible way you could get that from this. But let's keep going. Shine a light on God's healing blueprint recovery. So what they're trying to do... Okay, so they're trying to sell this Bible here. The Christ Cure. 10 biblical ways to heal from trauma, tragedy, and PTSD. What about things like cancer? Can that cure that? No? Damn. And then they have a brief interlude from a Jewish expert who says that the shroud is 100% real. I have came to believe the shroud is 100% real. In my heart, I believe it is authentic. Interesting. Come on, dude. The shroud first came into focus in 1353 when a French knight... See, they add in a lot of these little blurbs here, just interspersing like opinion pieces and advertisements to artificially contribute to the girth of this article. Because it's fully and transparently total nonsense. So let's take a brief interlude, talk about the Sudarium of Oviedo. Another blood-stained cloth that has puzzled researchers is the Sudarium of Oviedo in Spain's Cathedral of San Salvador. The cloth, thought to have been wrapped around Jesus' head at the time of the cross, measures 33 by 21 inches. Carbon-14 dating estimated it around 700 AD, though there are historical references to the Sudarium much earlier. Okay? Well, I mentioned that. You're not disputing it. There are fascinating similarities between the Sudarium and the shroud. For instance, they're both hoaxes. For instance, the two seemingly unconnected pieces of fabric are both stained by the same rare AB blood type, which is only shared by around 4% of the population. Amazing. Jesus was an AB guy. I had no idea. But so, if the shroud was not captured with direct contact to the figure, then how would his blood be on it? they're saying that he was wrapped in it, but like they can't even keep this consistent in their own article. Carbon for and also 4%. That's 1 in 25. Incredible odds. What are the odds of that? The two fabrics also share key blood clot locations, including where the crown of thorns could have been. Interesting choice of words there. Oh, warning, you only have a 7% chance of survival after cardiac arrest outside of a hospital. See, this is good market research here. And then here we go. We have famed illustrator depicts Jesus' face. Guys, they got someone to draw a picture of Jesus. That proves it. Our experiments show that many, not all, the peculiar properties of the body image of the shroud are produced by a burst of photons in a very near biblical account. Supporters of the authenticity of the shroud point to its inconsistency with the biblical account of Jesus' death, as well as the actual method. So now what they're saying, and they'll go over this for the next few pages, is that they're finding consistency with the shroud itself to the Bible, which I guess is meant to prove that it's real and that they have similarities. Number one, the detail of the shroud, let's pull this up again, is already so vague that you could make out fucking anything. They have this hilarious part where they try to, like, denotate, it's the full body spread, where they try to, like, denotate specific details about it. Abrasion, denuding of skin on knees. You see that? Do you see this, the abrasion on the knees? Isn't it crystal clear? Guys, I want to do a quick I Spy challenge. Can you point out to me the nail in the foot? Find it. Where is it? It's there. According to this, it's there. Don't you see it? Idiots. But what was I saying? They're saying that there are details within the shroud that are consistent with the Bible. Ignoring the fact that the details are so ambiguous that you could say that anything in it is consistent with anything else. You could say it's consistent with, like, a Goosebumps book. That does not prove anything regardless, even if there are details in it that are consistent with the Bible. Because the Bible likely existed before it, so the person that painted this, because there is tempera paint on it, likely could have added on damages and abrasions. You see, the one articulable detail you actually can see is an attempt to have several, like, lash marks and stuff on the back of it that were later found out to be tempera paint. But the person who hoaxed this likely saw consistency, likely took inspiration from the Bible to make this consistent with it. Again and again, they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. And then they're saying, but the shroud shows a man with multiple head injuries, a swollen right eye to the point of being shut closed, and severe swelling to the right cheek. The area under both eyebrows is also swollen, and numerous facial bruises are observed, as well as a deviated nose. You guys see that? You see it? I'm trying to find a specific thing where they mention cubits, because that was pretty humorous. Here it is. The burial depicted by the man on the shroud matches that of the first century Jewish contemporaries. The cloth is roughly 14 feet and 3 inches long by 3 feet and 7 inches wide. A number consistent with other Judean burial sites at the time, is consistent with the measures used by ancient Jews. A perfect match of 8 cubits long and 2 cubits wide. Now let's research how big a cubit is. We have the Ark Encounter here. These are the guys that trick children into believing that they are looking at Noah's Ark. Like, really? Like, they actually believe they have fucking Noah's Ark. The Bible tells us the length of Noah's Ark was 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. So, already on here, they have inconsistencies. They have 17.5 inches, 17.6 inches, 19.8 inches, estimated 20.4 inches, 20.6 inches. Though the original cubit length is uncertain, it was most likely one of the royal cubits, about 19.8 to 20.6 inches. So already, even by Christians themselves, they admit that the measurement of a cubit is inconsistent. Here's Encyclopedia Britannica saying that it was generally taken to be as equal to 18 inches. And then finally, we have Wikipedia, which shows how many different, different definitions of what a cubit is all throughout history. So you can't say, oh, it's an exact match when what a cubit is not definitive or consistent. In the 2017 interview, Numismatist, I'm totally lost on that. I hope it's something funny. Someone that researches coins. Oh, well, who else would you get for a discussion about religion? Argued that small bulges viewed around the man's eyes on the burial shroud were Roman leptons, a low-value coin that archaeologists only recently discovered were used in Jewish burials around the same time as Jesus' death. They're saying that there's coins on this bitch. Yeah, you see it on the fucking body pillow here? You see those coins? Alright. It's like they're trying to pretend that there is science backing up these backing up their claims here. That science is consistent with the findings that the shroud is real. When actual science says that there are numerous things that indicate that it's a hoax cloth. Let me pull up some examples. So yeah, that carbon dated between 1260 and 1390. Yep. We realize these cannot be actually handmade by the artists that created the shroud. So, okay. So what's interesting is that in this experiment here, to try and recreate the blood stains that are on the shroud, they applied blood to see how it would would run on skin. If he was stabbed, the blood stain would not be consistent with the blood stains we see on the shroud. And then they tried to do it with a sponge and a wooden plank, and they compared it, and they said that they cannot be consistent with actual actual injuries. This was another one where they attempted to find human DNA haplogroups. I remember what those are, but I don't. It's like the demographics under the world, essentially. Finding that they are not consistent with what geographically it would have been. Here it is, yeah. So this is also another time where they reprinted it. Holy evidence. Scientists are absolutely certain that the shroud is a crucified man. The image of the shroud has never been replicated before and is not art. Why carbon-14 dating that sets the shroud in the 13th century was faulty. It does not say why it does, it just says that it was. New X-ray dating methods put the shroud's origins to the time of Jesus. They're like, this is faulty. We're going to invent our new way to date things with X-rays. Because they don't really articulate how that's done, I can't really refute it. Oh, is this Jesus what looked like on Earth? This is another thing that Christians like to use, is the question mark, because they can't say, oh, well, this is what he looked like. This is a truth as an ironclad fact. They're doing this to have plausible deniability. It's like, oh, well, I'm only asking a question. And then the audience, who is meant to sort of pick up on what they're putting down, is meant to sort of infer the details of that. I'm gonna play an ad break right now, and then we'll just discuss some closing thoughts on this article. Because from top to bottom, there's no substance here. It's possible you are still seeing me if you have YouTube Premium or something, or an ad block like a degenerate, but that's fine. I understand. So, what have we learned? Christians will, or I guess people on the right in general, which includes Christians, will tend to obfuscate their, not try to obfuscate their beliefs, attempt to substantiate their beliefs by acting like what they have is evidence and saying like, oh, well, I'm using your arguments against you, but they're not actually adhering to a sincere scientific method or any veracity in their claims. Like, they're not trying to rhetorically or scientifically dispute the counter evidence to the Shroud of Turin. They just say that, oh, carbon dating puts this in the 13th century. Nuh-uh. But, you know, it's all about faith. It's all about just blindly trusting what they tell you. Because that's the only way you can get into heaven. If you just completely credulously follow the Bible, have no skepticism on what it says about Christianity, not on Christianity, on slavery, or on misogyny, or how people will interpret it in the real world to persecute minorities. Have no sort of like problems or skepticism on that, because then you can have eternal happiness. Because what kind of world would you want to live in where when you die you actually die? That's not what I want to live in. When you die, you don't actually die. You get to go to heaven and you get to have total euphoria for the rest of existence with no variation or change upon it. You don't die, because then what would happen after that? You would stop existing, and that's scary. I'm gonna cut this stream short because surprisingly, I thought 20 pages of Newsmax would cover an hour show, but unfortunately, they seem to have let me down. The first time they've let me down, actually, because typically they're an ironclad source. So I'm gonna leave that at that. I hope to have Douglas back on again, because he was an interesting guy to talk about. We'll talk about this, actually. He re-uploaded my segment of the show with him, without my permission, but that's fine, I guess. And there were some humorous, sorry, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. There's some humorous comments left. Sorry, oh god, this is hard to find. Christian apologist stuns atheist with powerful arguments. I would love to watch. Oh, you can't see what I'm seeing right now. I would love to find that. Damn it. YouTube is a great site. He definitely tagged me on it, but good luck trying to find it. Drake. There it is. Okay. Oh yeah, he fixed this for me because I didn't put that in. It is about faith. Jesus will, when time comes, he will come back. Jesus showed himself to Mary. He did show himself to others. So what this is in reference to is I made the argument during this episode saying that if Jesus was real, and in the Bible, Jesus appears to many people. He appears to Mary. He appears to Paul. That means that it is okay for Jesus to appear to people to prove that he exists. There's nothing against that, nothing wrong with that. He can do it and doesn't do it. If he can do anything, he can do that. But he can't do that. But they're just saying that Jesus showed himself to Mary. He did show himself to others. Holy Spirit is in our midst. Can't take one verse without reading on. He's not showing himself. He will, like he said. So this person's just having a stream of consciousness here. Nothing contextual to actually nothing like that actually indicates what is being said contextually. I believe what the Bible says. I do believe in order to understand the Bible, you need to research the history. New Testament is a lot of parables. Certain Bibles you should not study. Drake, you are knowledgeable. Austin is too. I'd love to speak with you on this as well. Peachy Pichu, you are welcome to come on the show. I was sourcing the single, the typical King James version of the Bible. I believe it is the most accepted version, but, some people prefer different DLC. At least Drake was claims than the usual atheist debater. What? Why should he persuade you? It is about faith. Yeah, again, emblematic of that they need to believe in something blindly without any sort of skepticism or belief. There are literally hundreds of videos of people claiming that they had an encounter with Jesus. Interesting, yeah. There's also hundreds of videos of people saying that the Twin Towers never fell, or that the moon landing didn't happen. There's beyond just video evidence in the Bible itself, which is supposed to be literal, is supposed to be true. Douglas tried to make the argument that some of it is referential, but that's just one of those having it both ways, where some of this is not meant to be literal, some of this is meant to be literal, and if it doesn't make sense, then it's not, and so on. What was I saying? I kind of did a Donald Trump there, where I got distracted by the end of the first part of the sentence. I do not endorse any, but there are definitely many examples of these claims. Does that make an atheist believe the gospel? Many atheists are amazing at waving away many things that lead towards believing. But as many questions as I may receive, I will do anything in my power to show the arguments against the faith are not as strong as one may think. Drake is the most polite atheist I've ever heard in a debate. If he just lets go off his pride, because I'm just so I'm an atheist because of my ego, guys. I'm just too smart to believe in Jesus. Sorry, you can't really read these comments here. My apologies. That might work. It's structured a little weird. It's such mental deflection gymnastics to try and duck around what is being said. God is faithful to those who seek. Nice courage to confront this insane worldview. Because nobody has ever committed, violence or anything in the name of religion. Okay. I'm gonna leave it at that. I do want Douglas back on. Douglas is the worst apologist, if you don't remember. Because he said some interesting points. He was pretty calm, but there were some arguments that, given the time to think about it, I have better responses to. Because some of the arguments he was making were so, detached from what I was expecting in reality or logic that I couldn't really refute them. One of which was, like I said at the top of the show, I was trying to say that he was asking me to prove a negative, to prove that God wasn't real. When the burden of proof to prove that God is real, that you're presenting this information. First of all, there's already lots of evidence to prove that God isn't real, because people say, oh, dinosaurs didn't, Christians used to say dinosaurs don't exist, because that would contradict the timeline of the Bible, setting the earth at 6,000 years old. But eventually they came to admit that dinosaurs do exist, and then, that's not meant to be literal. Before that, they'd believe that space didn't exist. And then eventually they're like, okay, obviously space exists, but now that part of the Bible, that's just not meant to be literal. But the other parts, they have it right. So there is evidence to contradict the Bible, which is the single thing that they use to substantiate their claims, to say, oh, in the Bible it says this and this, and we can see it in the real world. But regardless, I'm saying that he was asking me to prove a negative, and his example of being able to prove a negative is saying, oh, what if some guy's saying he doesn't have a shirt on, and you could say, well, you're not wearing a shirt. That's proving a negative. That's still proving a positive. That's just restructured differently to say that because it's the absence of a physical thing that's proving a negative, when that's still proving a positive. But anyways, I'm gonna leave that at that. Bit of a shorter episode, but I hope to come back more frequently when I can formulate thoughts. Thank you, everyone.